Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1079A, and today's date is September 19th, 2016, and the title of the episode is, The Central Banks Have Prepared the Economy for a 50% Market Collapse. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been looking at many of the economic indicators for quite a while. We've been tracking this, following it. And we can see this is the lead up to the collapsing economy, the collapsing dollar, the collapsing of the petrodollar. And we can see right now, even though the United States government central bankers have not announced it, or we haven't gotten the stock market signal, which I like to call it, because that is the last indicator showing us that we are in some type of recession or depression. But what we are seeing right now is the economy contracting. We are in a recession. A lot of the indicators are much, much worse than 2008 already. Just because the government doesn't tell you about it doesn't mean it's not happening. They didn't tell you that the subprime securities were garbage, but they were. They were telling you they were AAA. And I know that's Moody's and S&P, but it was backed up by the U.S. government. They didn't look into it. They didn't want to look into it. They knew exactly what was happening. And we can see right now that the U.S. government central bankers, they're going to continually keep the illusion alive until the very end. And even through the illusion, they won't even tell us that we're in a recession or depression. They're going to tell us months and months later on. But I can see through the corporate media what they're trying to do at this point, because they continually bring up the idea is that if companies are hiring, if they are hiring for the holiday season, the economy must be good, because I see, UPS is going to be hiring 79,000 temporary people. Kohl's is thinking about hiring 69,000 temporary people. Just because you're saying you're going to hire these people, and you do, it doesn't mean that you're going to have sales. It doesn't mean that retail is going to be good. It doesn't mean anything, actually, because there are a lot of stores that hired many, many people that completely went out of business. They're hoping that there's going to be sales. They're hoping that this is the case. But just because someone is hiring temporary employees, it's absolutely meaningless. Because what we've seen up to this point is that all these individuals are going to be sitting around doing nothing. And eventually what's going to happen after this holiday season, just like last holiday season, the sales are going to be declining. And we're going to see more and more stores closing. But they're trying to use this to convince you that, well, if they're hiring, that must mean the economy's doing well. No, it means absolutely nothing. It means they're hiring temporary people, paying them low wages to stand around as their sales drop. And then after everything is all said and done, they'll tell us that, sales didn't go that well. We have to close more stores. That's exactly what happened last year. They told us how many people they were hiring. They told us how great the holiday season was going to be. They were telling us how Cyber Monday, Black Friday are going to be incredible. It didn't pan out. It was awful. And what they're doing is they're preparing everyone to make everyone believe that everything's going to be fine, hoping that this will bring shoppers out this holiday season. But as this economy continually collapses, we need to look at their actions, not what they're telling us, not what they're saying, but what they're really thinking. And we can see that Ken Rogoff, who is a Harvard professor and the former IMF chief economist, he is still out there talking about a cashless society. He's talking about how we need to go into negative interest rates, how the economy needs to go cashless. And we can see that the U.S. government central bankers, they're getting worried. They're worried about the people making runs on the bank, taking their cash out. They're worried because if they go into negative interest rate territory, people are going to say, why do I need to keep my currency in the bank? So these go hand in hand. Cashless society, negative interest rates, because they've seen what has happened out in Europe, where there's negative interest rates, And people then went ahead and they took their currency out of the bank because they said, why would I need it in there? And they need your currency in there because they're prepared for bail-ins. And this is why they're continually bringing this up. They're hoping and preparing the public for what is about to happen. Because the central bankers, they control the system. We know this. We've been talking about this. They can keep the system alive while the real economy falls apart. Because when we say keep the system alive, we're talking about the stock market. We're talking about the manipulated numbers. But they can't stop the stores from closing. They can't push people to spend more money. They can't push people to purchase homes. They can't push people to do things that needs to be done to keep the economy afloat. Because remember, our GDP is made up of, 70% of spending. And as more and more people lose their jobs, as more and more people cut back, the spending decreases. And this is a problem for them. And the central bankers, they've set this system up to fail. And it's starting to look very, very similar to the Great Depression. And the common narrative back during the Great Depression is that the Fed didn't do enough. And, of course, this is used to justify the Fed's use of non-stop, extraordinary monetary policy since 2008. But we know it's a total lie. If you really look at what happened in 1929, the Fed went bananas. They expanded their balance sheet by 300%. The Fed's balance sheet grew from 5% of U.S. GDP to 23% of GDP. This is an expansion relative to GDP is really identical to what the Fed did since 2008. And the outcome of all of this is looking the same. In 1933, CPI began erupting higher. By 1937, CPI was 3.6%. The Fed was forced to hike rates to halt inflation, kicking the weak U.S. economy in the teeth and triggering the biggest recession, depression, collapse we've seen. Well, today we have the same problem. Core CPI hit the Fed's alleged 2% in November, and that was in November of 2015, and has remained above it ever since. So inflation is rising right now. And this is why they're continually talking about raising the rates, because they know once they do this, this entire system, and when I say the system, I'm talking about the stock market, will come down 50% or so. The U.S. economy, and when I'm talking about the U.S. economy, I'm talking about jobs, I'm talking about production, I'm talking about manufacturing, I'm talking about corporate defaults, I'm talking about retail, I'm talking about automobiles, I'm talking about everything else that we've been covering. When the Fed decides that we're going to raise these interest rates, we're going to see the same thing that occurred back in 1937, where the stock market crumbled. It halved. We are going to see the same thing today. And why are they all doing this? What is the purpose of all this? Well, the system is done. It can't go anywhere. The whole entire system is dead. There is too much debt. And they're running out of places to push the debt. And the petrodollar is under threat. This is why congressmen, they have expressed their concerns over the mounting national debt. What they're saying right now is that the mounting national debt is now a threat to national security. So the House of Representatives is saying that the government is not ready to radically deal with the issues because the authorities do not want to reduce spending. Because as we know, the Pentagon right now, besides losing trillions and trillions of dollars, which we know was siphoned off and used for other reasons, they're receiving about 50% of the budget right now. And they're not going to cut anything. So we can see right now that this debt problem has reached a point where they're saying it's a threat to national security. So we have this huge problem with debt. We have an economy that's falling apart. Europe is reeling right now. And they're just trying to keep the manipulation continually going. Why? Because they're getting ready to transition us. Transition us away from the dollar. We know this. Many things are on the table right now. One of them being the SDR. And we can see right now that this has been pushed for quite a while. China right now, their yuan is included in the SDR basket. China has made it clear that there's going to be a change, and the United States has to go along with it. Because remember, China holds a large portion of the U.S. government debt, and they're calling the shots. So what we see right now, preparations have been made to the international monetary system, which will allow us to introduce the SDR as one of the world's reserve currencies. And it will replace the dollar. The Chinese yuan to the SDR is a great way for the United States to stay in control for a short period of time, because the US dollar is more than 42% of the SDR right now. Now, the people who are making the policy changes, they're putting together mechanism required to convert global monetary systems from one system to the next. Remember, China and Russia, they have been working on this. The AIIB was set up for this specific purpose. The purpose of shifting accounts out of the BIS, IMF, or World Bank, or all three, into a new global banking system. The alternative to the current SWIFT system has been built by China and Russia. And all these changes have been happening. We've been talking about them. And we can see right now is that the central bankers, they are preparing to make a transition over to a new system. Now, they've been telling us that everything is fine with the dollar. They're telling us that the economy's fine. The world economy's fine. There's nothing wrong. So how do they make this announcement where they say, okay, now we're getting rid of the dollar, we're making a transition, we need to go someplace else? Well, back in the 70s, they talked about speculators, we had to come off the gold standard, and this was the beginning of a new system where we came off a system that was quite solid. Today we're coming off a system which is doomed, a system which is too big because of the debt, a system that is not operational anymore. The economy is collapsing. And this is while they're keeping the illusion alive. And we can see right now they're getting ready to make this transition, to move us to the next step. And this is why we're going to see some type of collapse of the system, some type of transition. Now, will this go perfectly smooth and everything will be fine? Maybe. But I doubt it. I believe it will be smooth for the elite, the 1%, but for everyone else, I think it's going to be horrific. Think about when they moved us from the gold standard onto the petrodollar system. How many people were out of jobs? The devaluation of the dollar. How they had to inflate. How many people couldn't find work at that time? How we couldn't get fuel. This time it's going to be much worse. This time the system is going to be much, much worse because we have a huge amount of debt. And once we come off the petrodollar system, once we move into the SDR, once we start making this transition, well, this is where the problem comes in. Because think about this for a second. I mean, major commodities like oil, they'll need to be priced in SDRs. The banking system needs to create deposits and loans in SDR as well as the dollar as we go through this transition. I mean, gold might provide a counterweight to impact the appreciation of the dollar or other currencies. But we can see this is going to be a rough period of time. And we're getting closer and closer to this point. And this is why everyone needs to be ready and prepared for what is about to happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.